Someone planned this. Not in the way people say that when they want to sound certain. In the way law enforcement means it. Surveillance studied, timing calculated, access confirmed. Nancy Guthrie did not vanish randomly. She was taken by someone who knew exactly who she was. That is not a theory. That is what investigators are building a case around right now. Nancy is 84 years old. She is a mother. She is a grandmother. And she is the mother of one of America's most recognizable faces. NBC Today show anchor Savannah Guthrie. On January 31st in Tucson, Arizona, Nancy was last seen by her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni. Then she was gone. 100 days have now passed. The FBI is involved. Pima County Sheriff's investigators are still active. Forensic testing is underway, and not one person has been arrested. Here is what we are going to show you today. First, what the forensic evidence actually tells us about how this abduction was carried out. Second, the single expert statement that reframes everything you think you know about who is responsible. Stay with us, because by the end of this video, the shape of this crime will be impossible to unsee. The Guthrie family is still holding hope. The investigation is still moving. And somewhere out there, someone is sitting with the knowledge of what happened to Nancy on January 31st. That person knew her. That is not speculation. That is the conclusion investigators are pointing toward. And one attorney just said it out loud. This is justice over everything. Uncover the truth. Demand justice. If Nancy deserves answers, subscribe now and stay with us. Because the moment forensic teams examined what was left behind at that scene, one thing became impossible to ignore. This was not a crime of opportunity. It was a crime of preparation. Surveillance footage exists. Law enforcement confirmed it. They have been studying it. And what that footage reportedly shows is not a frantic, disorganized abduction. The behavior captured suggests planning, not panic. The Pima County Sheriff's Department leads the ground investigation. The FBI's involvement escalated the case beyond standard missing persons protocol. Federal entry into a disappearance does not happen automatically. It happens when investigators believe the crime crosses jurisdictional lines, or when the complexity demands it. DNA testing is now a central focus. Forensic analysts are not searching for a general lead. They are building what criminal defense attorney John W. Day calls a reliable evidentiary roadmap. In modern cases like this, forensic evidence is about creating a reliable evidentiary roadmap that investigators can build a case around. Day told Hello magazine. He practices criminal defense and civil rights law out of Santa Fe, New Mexico. He has watched law enforcement build cases from the outside, and he is direct about what the evidence pattern here indicates. What is strange about this is the combination. Surveillance footage, active DNA testing, and federal involvement, all running simultaneously at the 100-day mark. Most missing persons cases do not sustain this level of forensic momentum this far in. That tells you investigators are not searching blindly. They are narrowing. Now, here is what every person watching needs to understand. All family members have been cleared. Tommaso Cioni, Savannah's husband, Italian national, the last confirmed person to see Nancy alive, has been officially exonerated. The investigation is not looking inward at the family. It is looking at someone else, someone with access, someone with knowledge, someone who understood Nancy's world well enough to move through it, undetected. Law enforcement has consistently indicated they believe this was an intentional abduction tied to Nancy Guthrie specifically, rather than a random crime, Day stated. Not random, targeted, intentional. So who targets an 84-year-old woman, and why? Every piece of evidence pointed in the same direction. Not outward toward a stranger, inward, toward someone Nancy already knew. And that is where this case becomes something else entirely. Before we go further, you need to hear this part slowly, because this is the section most coverage has rushed past, and the detail buried inside it carries more weight than anything the headlines have led with. Here is what it actually takes to abduct a person in a planned, deliberate way and disappear without an immediate arrest. We are going to break it down. 5 things the perpetrator in this case would have needed to know. 1. Nancy's daily routine, when she was home, when she was alone, when the windows of access opened. 2. The layout of the property, which approach points existed, where cameras were positioned or weren't. 3. The family schedule, who was present, who was absent, and on what days. 4. A method of transportation prepared in advance. No improvised abduction at this level holds together without an exit plan already in place. 5. Confidence, the kind that only comes from familiarity. You do not move through someone's world that cleanly unless you have been there before. And this is where it gets complicated, because every one of those 5 things points to proximity, not to a stranger who happened to select Nancy, to someone who already occupied some part of her life. Attorney John W. Day said it directly. The facts that are publicly available, the surveillance footage, the evident planning, the continuous emphasis on forensic evidence, indicate that investigators are considering an individual who might have had knowledge of Nancy, her family, the property, or the family's daily routines. Read that again, because that is not a vague statement. That is a credentialed attorney describing a profile, and that profile is not a stranger. Now here is what has not been answered yet. The DNA is in processing. The forensic roadmap is being built. But nobody has named a direction. What does that DNA actually point toward? And what does forensic genealogy mean for a case where the suspect has never been publicly identified? Who do you think had that level of access to Nancy? Drop your theory below. Keep it respectful. This family is still waiting for answers. And what one expert went on record to say next reframes everything law enforcement has been quietly building toward, starting with what that DNA roadmap could actually reveal. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She raised a daughter who became one of America's most watched journalists. She built a life in Tucson. She had routines, relationships, and a world that functioned on trust. That world is where the answer lives. John W. Day gave us the clearest framework on record for what investigators are now building toward. The best possible outcome would be a clean DNA link that gives investigators a roadmap to a suspect direction. Whether that's a DNA profile, forensic genealogy lead, or evidence that can definitively place a suspect at the scene. Forensic genealogy is not a theory. It is a discipline. It has identified suspects in cold cases that sat dormant for decades. It works backward from a single biological sample, cross-referencing DNA databases to build a family tree, then narrowing that tree to a suspect. It does not require the perpetrator to have a prior criminal record. It requires only that someone in their biological network exists in a database. And this is where the case shifts entirely. Up to this point, the absence of an arrest could look like a stalled investigation. It is not. Investigators often possess significantly more information than they are able to reveal to the public, particularly in cases of potential kidnapping, where it is essential to maintain the integrity of the evidence, Day stated. Quiet is not the same as cold. This case is not cold. It is being constructed, evidence layer by evidence layer. Toward a moment, investigators are not willing to compromise by moving too soon. Someone out there knows what happened on January 31st, and the science is catching up to them. Share this video. Keep Nancy's name in the conversation. That is how justice starts. This is justice over everything. Do you think the DNA evidence will be the breakthrough that breaks this case open? Tell us below. The science is moving. The case is building. But behind every piece of evidence is a woman and a family, still waiting for the one answer that changes everything. 100 days. Think about what that number means for a family. 100 mornings of waking up and not knowing. 100 nights of holding hope against the weight of silence. Nancy Guthrie is not a headline. She is a mother, a grandmother, an 84-year-old woman who trusted the world around her. And that trust was broken by someone who knew her name. You now know what most people watching the news cycle do not. This was planned. This was personal. The forensic evidence is being built into a case that investigators intend to hold. and the DNA analysis now underway could produce the kind of lead that ends this. The Guthrie family has not stopped. Law enforcement has not stopped. The FBI has not stopped. And neither will we. Justice does not always move fast, but it moves. And when it arrives in this case, and it will arrive for an 84-year-old woman who deserved none of this. Nancy Guthrie still deserves answers. Her family still deserves answers. And so does every person who has been following this case from the beginning. Nancy has been missing for over 100 days. What do you think it will take to bring her home? Leave your thoughts below. Subscribe to Justice Over Everything. Share this video for Nancy. Uncover the truth. Demand justice.